Welcome to this module, which will provide you with an overview of the ALCOA Contractor Safety Program. At ALCOA, our Contractor Safety Program starts with the safety pre-qualification process. The prevention of employee and contractor fatalities is considered the most important aspect of our overall safety. Unfortunately, we continue to see gaps in our own and our contractors' safety performance, and as a result are still falling short of our goal to eliminate contractor fatalities. In addition to ALCOA's concern, fatality and serious injury prevention should be a concern for you and your construction or contracted services company. When it comes to construction and contracted services activities, no one person or single party can create a safe job site. It requires a collaborative effort by ALCOA, the contractor, the crews, all working together from the top of their respective organizations, down to, and most importantly with, the individuals assigned to complete the various tasks in a job or project, no matter how large or small. ALCOA values human life above all else, including yours. That's why we are committed to working closely with our contractors and their employees to ensure those potential high-risk exposures are managed daily on your job site at our plant. When we use the term contractor, at ALCOA it means contractor, subcontractor, and/or contracted services. Regardless of which type of contractor is doing the work, they are expected to be pre-qualified and comply with ALCOA's safety expectations. Let's take a moment to review a couple of other important definitions. A hazard is a source or situation with the potential for harm in terms of injury or ill health, damage to property, damage to the workplace environment, or a combination. Hazards are usually in the form of physical or chemical contact. A risk is the expectation of a loss. It is the combination of severity and probability. While we've made progress in some areas, we are still falling short of our goal to eliminate contractor fatalities. So we have a plan, but what's the process for getting there? We need to build and sustain a global contractor safety system to recognize hazards specific to the construction and error-likely situations, assess the high-risk jobs, activities, tasks, and steps within a task, including the non-routine, and by critical activities, both expected and unexpected. We need to act in time to eliminate and control those hazards, and we need to apply those lessons learned to predict areas of current and future vulnerability, to raise the bar in Latin America, Europe, and Russia, to incorporate human performance tools into the path of contractor activities, and to enhance effectiveness of pre-job and pre-task briefings. Did you notice hazard recognition includes the ability to detect error-likely situations? Like it or not, we've come to realize that we all make mistakes or errors. In fact, according to some experts, an error causes someone to get hurt at work almost every 7 seconds. Every 6 hours, the average worker witnesses or is involved in human error. Have you ever made a mistake? You know, an action, reaction, or decision you'd like to take back, or perhaps a situation where you were just plain lucky something worse didn't happen. Unfortunately, in our business, errors can injure or kill people, but being able to recognize and understand the most frequent error-likely situations can help make them more predictable. And if we can predict error-likely situations, then we improve our ability to make them manageable and preventable. What we are going to focus on is your mental model on a specific task at a specific time, or what we refer to as this person, at this task, and at this time. A very important point to remember is that a construction crew cannot be in a performance mode. In fact, each individual within the crew can be in a different mode on the same task. To illustrate this point, consider a situation where you have 2 employees, one who has been working on the job for over 5 years, and one who just started a week ago. The experienced or more senior employee is likely to know a lot more about the risk and potential hazard of the task than the junior, less experienced employee. And as a result, the error traps and error rates are likely to be different for both. There are many real-life examples of this situation. In one case, 2 workers who were new to the job were re-roofing a 2-story building. They were not wearing any personal fall protection, but guardrails were installed on the perimeter of the roof. There were some skylights in the area that the workers were re-roofing. One worker was using a nail gun to install new shingles near an unguarded skylight. As the worker nailed shingles near the skylight, he stepped backwards onto it. The skylight was not strong enough to hold his weight, and it broke. He fell through the skylight and landed on the floor below. He was seriously injured in the fall and died a few days later at the hospital. In this example, two inexperienced roofers recognized that the roof already had guardrails to provide perimeter protection from fall hazards, so they didn't think they had to wear fall protection. However, they did not recognize or know from experience that there is also a hazard of falling through a section of the roof that might be deteriorated or through a skylight. Our experienced contractors guard the skylight with a sturdy cover. As before, when the experienced worker steps backwards, instead of stepping onto the skylight, he bumps into the cover, regains his footing, and continues installing shingles. There are three primary mental models that we can use when completing a task. They are skill-based, rule-based, and knowledge-based. Let's take a minute to describe each of them in more detail. When you complete a task that you have done many times over, in other words, one that is routine and repetitively done as a matter of habit, you are working in what is called a skill-based performance mode. It generally involves a series of simple steps or actions, such as a carpenter using a hammer to drive a nail into a board. When working in this mode, you're likely to make an error 1 in every 1,000 times. When you complete a task using a set of rules, a standard practice, procedure, or safe work instruction, whether written or not, you are in what we call a rule-based performance mode. A good example of this performance mode would be welding and cutting in compliance with a hot work permit procedure. In this mode, you're likely to make an error 1 in every 100 times. Work that is non-routine, infrequent, that you have never done before, or involves troubleshooting a problem where you don't necessarily know what you don't know, puts you in a knowledge-based performance mode. Troubleshooting an electrical ground fault in an unfamiliar piece of equipment could be an example. Most of you have been trained to do certain things well and possess unique capabilities that allow you to effectively perform some tasks and not others. Remember, your error rate increases dramatically to 1 in 2 to 1 in 10 chance of making an error when you find yourself in the knowledge-based performance mode. The better our abilities match the task, the more likely we can complete them without error. Past experience can play an important role in whether your work crew is able to recognize error-likely situations that could impact your safety. The most critical error-likely situations to recognize are high workload and time pressure, poor communication or guidance, overconfidence, first-time or infrequent task, distraction, and extended hours or end-of-shift factors. Triggers are actions, reactions, or a gut feeling that something isn't right. Let's take a few minutes to highlight some common triggers that can help us predict when we are prone to error-likely situations. In a high workload or time pressure situation, some of the triggers are a tight time schedule, doing more than one task at a time. For poor communication and guidance, triggers include not enough information given, the tendency to fill in information when it does not exist, or guidance doesn't match previous experience. For overconfidence, you feel like you have done something like this before, or you have a belief that past experiences will normally repeat themselves in current circumstances. First-time or infrequent task triggers include a new task that has not been done before or in the last 6 months, you have little related experience, and you don't know what you don't know. Distraction triggers include leaving the original job before it's finished, frequent interruptions, or simply not having your mind on the task. And end-of-work shift or extended hours triggers include rushing to complete the task and becoming tired or fatigued. Let's take a closer look at 2 error traps of distraction and poor communication as examples. In this video segment, you will see how an interruption or distraction contributed to a fatal accident.
A driver was delivering a load of steel beams to a job site. After positioning his flatbed truck as directed, he stood near the hydraulic crane that was offloading the truck to watch the operation. The company operating the crane had secured the area using vehicles and 2 strategically placed workers to keep out unauthorized personnel. However, no barricades were in place to stop workers from coming within the crane's swing radius. The driver was allowed to stay in the secured area because he was a friend and knew the operator. Before the unloading began, the driver moved closer to the crane, now within range of the crane's swing radius and out of the line of sight of the crane operator. Suddenly, the crane operator began moving the crane, positioning it for the offloading operation. Within seconds, the truck driver was crushed between the crane's counterweight and the right rear outrigger.
Hopefully you saw that while the distraction certainly wasn't the only contributing factor, it did play a significant role. Effective communication is a very important element in ensuring a job or task is accomplished safely. For communications to be effective, they must be clear, concise, and complete. One of the ways we can reduce errors in communication is to practice three-way communication in critical operational activities. Three-way communication is particularly valuable when giving or receiving directions. Three-way communication uses a repeat back from the receiver as well as the sender to ensure that the message is understood. At ALCOA, we want you to use three-way communication with repeat back for high-risk, critical task steps. In order to mitigate the effects of the error traps that we have discussed, employees need to utilize the various tools available to them. One important tool for helping to recognize and eliminate error traps is to just take a couple of minutes before the work begins to answer the questions you see listed here. Make sure that you answer them out loud as you go through them. First, do I understand the task? If you're not sure what you are supposed to do, you should not be starting the task. Can I do it safely? This allows you to consider the hazards, what PPE is necessary, and help to ensure that you or your coworkers do not get hurt. What error-likely situations do I have? Consider the traps and triggers we just discussed when answering this question. What error reduction tools will I use? We will be talking about a few tools that you can use in the next few slides. What can go wrong? This is an important question because it allows you to think about potential problems before they occur so that you can plan a response should they happen. What is the worst that can happen? Here you need to consider significant consequences to people, equipment, or the environment. What conditions would stop this task? Think about the stop work criteria that would apply in this task. And finally, am I qualified and ready to start? Only if you can answer yes to this question should you begin the task. STAR is another tool that we would like for you to use. STAR is applied to an individual activity at the step level. Here, the operator's sequence is to stop, pause before performing the step to focus on attention to detail and attempt to eliminate distractions. Think, prior to taking any action. Verify that the action to be taken is correct by questioning actions and responses. Point or touch the correct component, equipment, or system, and compare it to permits, prints, procedures, or other job aids. Act, to retain physical or visual contact and perform the intended action. Review, where you verify that the actual response was the expected response. Applying STAR concepts can be an effective technique to compensate for error traps such as distraction, stress, and overconfidence. Before we leave this slide, look at the think step in STAR again. How do we know if the action we are about to take is the right one? Even if we verify the action, point or touch the components, and compare to job aids, we may still be initiating the wrong action because we don't know what we don't know. Why? Because we are now in knowledge-based performance mode. Think equals knowledge. Don't we want to shift out of knowledge-based performance mode with all of its uncertainty and error potential back to either rules or skill-based performance wherever possible to increase our margin of safety? Of course we do. What's our error rate in knowledge-based mode? 1 in 2 or 1 in 10? What does it become if we shift to rule-based mode? 1 in 100. So we need to signal, or trigger as we are going to call it, to help us recognize when we are approaching an error trap so that we can shift from knowledge-based performance mode back to rules-based or skills-based mode. Seek Out is a tool that we want you to use prior to taking any action. It's simply a way of looking out for each other by checking with a coworker or supervisor to make sure the actions you are about to take are the right ones. It gives you the opportunity to get assistance with a problem and can serve as a signal for you to stop when a step doesn't make sense, a step won't achieve the desired results, or inaccuracies exist in a procedure, print, drawing, permit condition, safety plan, or other job aid. The final error prevention tool is to stop work.
If it don't look right, it don't feel right, you need to stop, take a second look at it.
It's a gut feel that says, I think we're in a situation where we could be accepting some risk.
and let's stop and talk about what we're getting ready to do. Just to take the time to fully think out what it is that you're about to do.
We try to rush a lot of times at our job, and this just slows us down a little bit and takes that extra step.
Stop work criteria will help you spot situations where you or a coworker should ask for further guidance in order to proceed safely. Some examples of stop work criteria include those you see listed on this slide. ALCOA expects its contractors to conduct pre-job and task safety briefs on each shift, each day prior to beginning work and for any high-risk task. Engaged employees are safer employees, and crew pre-job and task briefs can help identify hazards and more accurately assess risks, which lead to establishing safer work methods and defined stop work criteria. All part of a process that seeks to tap into your crew's knowledge and experiences actively and openly to prevent fatalities and serious injuries. Another important part of the pre-job or task briefing concerns work permits. A work permit is a written document requiring authorized sign-off by ALCOA and the contractor to perform designated activities. Work permits are usually required for working in confined spaces, digging and excavation, roof access, asbestos removal, burning and welding, high-voltage electrical work, and other high-risk activities. Let's take a closer look at the pre-task safety briefing. Pre-task safety briefings are short, task-specific meetings conducted for each crew, on each shift, for each of the high-risk tasks identified. They should be task-specific, conducted by each crew, craft, or subcontractor on each shift your crew is present at the job site, and identify the high-risk tasks daily. These briefings are aimed at engaging you and other members of your crew in selection of the high-risk task or tasks and identification of critical steps, potential error-likely situations, worst thing that can happen on this task this time, task-specific stop work criteria, and the task-specific help chain. As a minimum, every pre-job briefing should seek to cover the following: the expected job steps and outcomes, hazard associated with the job, error-likely situations, work procedures involved, special precautions, energy sources needing control, personal protective equipment, and stop work criteria. If this process is performed effectively, the successful outcomes are that work is performed efficiently and safely, clearly identified hazards and responses are established, the scope of work is understood, and all affected employees understand what is expected of them. One final aspect of our contractor safety effort that we haven't discussed is the role of field observations. Contractors are expected to perform field observations to verify compliance with the plan and to identify gaps or deviations from the plan. This is particularly critical for those tasks identified as high-risk tasks. Changes observed in the scope, conditions, hazards, or predefined safe work method must be addressed, and when a new risk is identified, reviewed and modified to effectively eliminate or control the risk. Here are some guidelines for conducting field observations on your high-risk tasks daily. Tasks to be observed are prioritized based on a risk profile. The observations engage employees, ask questions, identify hazards, discuss solutions, and coaching opportunities are captured. Non-routine tasks are targeted for observation. Employees new to the job are observed. They are conducted daily for each crew for each shift, and they are documented. We realize that this is a lot of information to take in during this overview. In summary, the key points to take away from this video are: ALCOA values human life above all else. Our global contractor safety system was developed to recognize hazards associated with construction and contractor activities so that we could reduce the hazards and incidents associated with those hazards. Humans make mistakes, and those errors can contribute to injuries. However, if we recognize the error traps and triggers and apply the appropriate tools, we can mitigate the risk and prevent injuries. To predict and prevent errors, we need to focus on this person performing this task at this time and applies the tools discussed. Pre-job or pre-task briefings play an important role in identifying error-likely situations, and detailed field observations need to be conducted daily to remain vigilant in preventing injuries and fatalities. Should you have any questions related to what was covered here, please contact the location EHS Resources or the ALCOA Contractor Safety SPA.